write that down, write that down, write that down.
Thanks for joining us. Editor at FightGameMedia.com, staff writer at WrestlingObserver.com, F4WOnline.com, and this is Write That Down with author, announcer, historian, journalist, editor Fumi Saito, and myself. Okay, today we embark on a long journey, the first, part one of our profile series on the one, the only, very, very special Antonio Inoki. This episode focuses on Inoki's early years when he was growing up, the youngest of 11 children of a big family and moving to São Paulo, Brazil, losing his grandfather on the boat ride there, and Rikidōzan finding him while in Brazil, going back to Japan working for JWA and Rikidōzan, debuting the same day as Giant Baba, teaming with Giant Baba later on, being the super tag team, the rise of Tokyo Pro Wrestling, the rise of International Wrestling, IWE, the debut of New Japan in 1972. We talk a bit about Karl Gotch as well, how he factors into all of this. This is all in the first episode. This is just the early years. We only get up to 1972, 50 years from the debut of the company, New Japan, by the way. It'll be next month, actually, February. So, it's pretty dense, right? That's just part one. The early years, Antonio Inoki. This is Write That Down, Fumi Saito, myself, Justin Nipper. This is part of probably what's going to be a 5-episode series on Inoki. We're going to follow up with something on Baba as well that's going to coincide with all this. So, everyone, strap in. Let's go. Let's start with talking about Inoki before he became a wrestler, before he trained as a wrestler.
Right. He was born 1943, February 20th, 1943. So he would be, 79. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And he was born in Yokohama, Tsurumiku, Yokohama. Yeah. 7 boys and 4 girls. 11 people. Yeah.
Wow. Big family.
7 brothers and 4 sisters, and he is like the second youngest of 11 children.
He's the baby.
Second youngest of 11 children in Inoki family. And his father passed away when he was only 5.
Wow.
Yeah, so he does not have much memory of his father, but the closest father figure was Inoki's grandfather, Jiro-san.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was like more of a father than a grandpa. It was really close. And the grandpa Inoki, well, his last name wasn't Inoki, but his Jiro Sagara. Okay, he was the one who initiated the idea to bring the whole family to Brazil.
Mm-hmm. What year was this?
The year he went to Brazil.
So he was a little kid still?
He was 14.
14, okay, like junior high school.
Yeah, 1957.
Okay, 1957.
Yeah. Right, 1957, he went to, at the age of 14, he went to not the whole family, but half the family. Half the family stayed in Japan, but the grandpa took half the family and Inoki's mother and brothers to Brazil to start coffee farm in Brazil. That's a gutsy thing to do.
It's a risk. It's a big risk. Yeah.
1957, 12 years after the war.
Mm-hmm. A lot of families were trying to reestablish themselves, and a lot of families seem to be like dipping into new industries like this, opportunities,
like said,
entrepreneurship.
Inoki was born 1943, so the war was over when he was just 2 years old, 1945, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he grew up in this post-war era, definitely. And at the age of 14, 1957, his family, with the initiation of his very influential grandfather, Jiro, that they took the boat from Yokohama. Not a plane. It's a big boat all the way across the Pacific Ocean, all the way to Brazil. And unfortunately, that the father figure, grandfather Jiro, died on the boat on their way to Brazil. So the grandpa never made it there. Yeah.
So when they got to Brazil without their grandfather, what happened next?
That the whole family moved to São Paulo, Brazil, and then started working for the farm. Yeah.
Started harvesting coffee beans.
Yeah, but wasn't quite the owner of the farm, but they had to work for somebody first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also they worked for, fruit and vegetable market. It's a real physical labor, right?
Mm-hmm. Hard
And
manual labor.
also, yeah, and then also Inoki and his older brothers were in karate and track and field. And Inoki was a shot putter, thing doing that. Yeah, and he made some teenage record of some shot putters, something athletic, and that 1950, 2 years, 3 years, shortly 3 years later, I believe it was either 59 or the beginning of 1960. Rikidōzan had a tour in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when legend starts. Either Inoki was discovered by Rikidōzan or being introduced by somebody to Rikidōzan. And then the first sight that Rikidōzan looked at him and said, I'm going to bring this kid back to Japan.
It really sounds like a movie, the beginning of a movie story or
beginning
something.
of the movie, right. So his life has been very dramatic from that very early, real early stage. Then 3 years later, after the entire family moved to Brazil, just Inoki, Kanji Inoki at the time, real name, 17-year-old Kanji Inoki came back to Japan 3 years later. 17-year-old Inoki, and he was introduced as he was actually they had this fictitious profile on him. Says this kid was born in Brazil, São Paulo, and half Japanese, half Brazilian. So he was not allowed to speak Japanese. Is that weird?
For how long was that?
Oh, the first rookie year. At the time, that sports pages and the media pretty much believed what Rikidōzan will tell you.
I see.
Pretty much didn't go into big details or anything. So that the piece of paper said that this 17-year-old Kanji Inoki was discovered by Rikidōzan in São Paulo, Brazil, and being brought back to Japan to be wrestler. And he is half Brazilian and half Japanese, Nisei. So that was his very initial gimmick. So he had this fantasy thing, like almost like a fiction, background right from the beginning. Isn't that interesting?
Kind of like a myth, almost a myth.
Oh yeah, well, the Inoki is kind of like a myth. His whole life, right? Because we think we know a lot about Inoki, and of course we know what he has done and how influential and his glory, just glorified his wrestling career and what he hasn't done. It's like, wow, it's like he's done everything. But yes, from the beginning, rookie Kanji Inoki was brought back to Japan as a golden rookie and introduced in April of 1960 as rookie. Very same day, 2 rookies were introduced in the ring. Shohei Baba, later on Giant Baba, of course, and Kanji Inoki, rookie, 5 years younger than Baba. But Baba was more of a golden rookie because he was the former baseball player and Yomiuri Giants pitcher.
So he had a little bit of a following. People were familiar.
Yeah, and then also he was sent to America pretty much right away in rookie year. See, Inoki didn't have very the Baba's treatment. See, Baba was old enough where he didn't have to live in dojo. He had his own apartment and just came to dojo every morning to practice. Whereas Inoki had to live in Rikidōzan's home, like a servant.
Very similar to kind of how Jumbo Tsuruta took his training and his treatment
Right.
came to
Well,
all Japan.
because Jumbo was former Olympian and already had a wrestling background, and then sent to Amarillo, Texas to be trained under Dory Funk and family, right? But the Inoki was more of a deshi, if you know the word, like disciple of Rikidōzan dynasty.
Mm.
Oh, being 17-year-old is a lot to do with that too, like being, a minor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was living in Rikidōzan's home, so he was taking care of Rikidōzan outside the ring, basically washing his back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, a very Japanese way to do it. But yeah, Inoki didn't have this like a golden rookie treatment. He was more of a shindeshi. Deshi is like a disciple. But yeah, they trained under Rikidōzan and all the senior wrestlers like Toyo Nobori, the Kokichi Endo, Michiaki Yoshimura, all these people, and 17-year-old and like I said, April of 1960, Baba and Inoki were introduced together the very same day, right? In the ring by ring announcer. And September 30th of the same year, Baba and Inoki had a debut match the very same day too. So they were a big rival from the beginning. Introduction to the crowd and the press the same day, April of 1960, and the debut match September 30th of the same year, 1960. Giant Baba beat Katsura Hama in just a few minutes, and Inoki was beaten by Kintaro Oki, the MOBA, the arm lock shoot move, and Inoki was beat. So Giant Baba went over, big first match, and Inoki was just a guy, And Giant Baba pretty much left the following year to be a big star in New York. And Yoshino Sato and Yukio Suzuki, later Mammoth Suzuki, that they toured all over America. But in the meantime, 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20th, that 20-year-old Inoki was doing the young boy work in the meantime, right? And yeah, so Inoki was more of an underdog very first 5 years or so. Are you following me?
It's kind of the traditional or the typical path that a lot of Japanese wrestlers or even Japanese individual sports athletes
Sumo
kind of
wrestling
follow
tradition.
sumo wrestling for sure.
Yeah. And if you know the word senpai and kohais, if you started a day earlier or a week earlier, that you always be a senpai, like a senior,
Yeah, like a senior and junior, like a mentor and mentee. And that
I think so. Yeah.
That really colors the dynamic of the relationships between people, especially in Japanese wrestling and especially here.
Yeah.
There is that level of it's a vertical relationship,
it's very vertical. Yes.
I think that really
good and bad.
It's just how it is, though. And when you get that, you really start to understand why certain wrestlers act certain ways in the ring or they wrestle certain ways and such. But we really throughout for more than 20 years, we saw that kind of relationship, rivalry or whatever you want to call it, turned into something much bigger than both of them.
Yeah, but for Inoki and Giant Baba's case, they'll cross path again, in a few years. That Baba came back a couple years later as a main event cluster, right? Inoki still being that the premium imperium or the mid card young guy. There was a difference in the status there, and there was a World League tournament every spring, if you remember. JWA had the kind of like All Japan's Champions Carnival, or New Japan had an IWGP tournament every spring before IWGP became a heavyweight championship title. That every spring there was a big tournament called the World League. They started like in 1959, I believe. That like people like Jesse Ortega, Enrique Torres, that all these big superstar from America came and did like a round robin tournament. And in fourth year, that should have been 1961 or 2. Inoki was already thrown in there in his fourth year career. It was very interesting that the tournament had people like Luthes, Freddie Blassie, and Sonny Myers, all these big names. So this 18, 19-year-old Inoki had a single match against all these people already in Japan. I'm talking about Luthes.
So he was a bit of a phenom, like
Freddie
a
Blassie.
young phenom.
I was thrown into the tournament as the youngest guy in there, and I had a chance to see Karl Gotch in his prime. Yeah, Karl Gotch's very first trip was back in 1961. Inoki was sitting right outside the ring like a young boy, watching him. They weren't tight until Karl Gotch moved to Japan in 1968 to be the exclusive coach for JWA. That's when Inoki and Karl Gotch became really tight. But rookie Inoki was witnessing all these, every single American superstar coming from America to have a important single match against Rikidōzan. He was there. People didn't notice him at the time because Inoki was the one who was carrying Rikidōzan's costume, or like you said, towel boy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Towel boy. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not interesting. It's like a very interesting to watch. Japanese videotape from like the 70s and 80s, who's walking around outside the ring, who will become somebody later on.
Lots of people.
Like,
you can watch a lot of lots and lots of different stars when they were,
young boy wearing tracksuit and top and bottom. You see young Nobuhiko Takada or young Akira Maeda or all these people outside the ring, or like
Minoru
young
Suzuki.
Minoru Suzuki
with
carrying
Inoki.
people's bag. Yeah, of course. Chono, Hashimoto, Muto for that matter. Yeah, but the Inoki was actually one of them for Rikidōzan, carrying costume and towels and bucket of water or something. But yeah, it was interesting that the Inoki was witnessing all these things from like 3 feet away.
And
Isn't that interesting?
And it's interesting also because Baba didn't do that.
Because he was sent to America right away and then had André the Giant treatment.
Totally different experience he had.
Yeah. Because second year on, Giant Baba was sent to America and it was already headlining Madison Square Garden against people like Argentina Rocca.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, Antonio Inoki was doing first match, second match every night and get beat.
When did he become Antonio and drop the kanji name?
I believe it was during the trip to Okinawa sometime in like 58, 50. Wait a minute. No. I said he rookie. It was 1960. So it had to be like a 63 then.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a couple of years after his debut.
Yeah, and also Rikidōzan had a drama series called Champion Futoshi that Rikidōzan appeared as himself, and there was a TV drama, the little kid becoming wrestler, right? And Inoki dressed up in Native American costume and played the villain that the challenging Rikidōzan. So actually, in this TV drama, black and white TV drama, there was a dream match between Rikidōzan and young Antonio Inoki, and Inoki wearing like a costume, but that was young Inoki doing it, and that the videotape exists, the DVD's out there.
Wow! So it's the only footage we have of Inoki versus Rikidōzan.
It's a part of the movies, but yeah, that exists.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And during the trip, that tour, please remember this: Okinawa was still part of U.S., United States. Island of Okinawa was not returned to Japan until 1972. There was a war, remember? And the entire island of Okinawa was still territory of U.S. That's why they still have the 70% of Okinawa land, the entire land is occupied by U.S. base to this day. But that's not the point. But that's not what we're talking about today. But during the Okinawa tour, Toyo Nobori, the senior wrestler, gave Inoki Antonio name. There's been quite a few theory to that. During Rikidōzan's era, most of the American superstar made trip to Japan, but the two wrestlers who never made to Japan was Antonino Rocca and Buddy Rogers. Those two never came to Japan.
Any reason?
I guess New York was pretty far away at the time in 1960s.
Yeah.
You know, we believed, or Japanese audience were led to believe that those superstars came from all over the world or all over the United States. But the most wrestlers actually came from California at the time.
Huh.
See, there was no direct flight to New York at the time. Every airplane from Tokyo, Haneda Airport, will land in Honolulu, Hawaii first, then went to California. There's no direct flight from Tokyo to New York like we do today. So Madison Square Garden in New York, or the St. Louis for that matter, it was pretty far away. And if you think about the Sharp Brothers, the Freddie Blassie, the whatnot, they were California-based professional wrestlers.
That's right.
Dick Bayer, the Destroyer, too.
Mm-hmm.
And under the very unfortunate circumstances that December of 1963, Rikidōzan passes away.
1963, that's right.
Yeah, December of 1963. And Inoki was promised at the time that the next rookie who's going to America is you, right? And I mean, like going to America, just like today, like you go overseas for a year and go away and then come back as a superstar, right? Think about like a Kazuchika Okada treatment or Shinsuke Nakamura, Hiroshi Tanahashi, for that matter, everybody else. That you disappear from Japanese ring for like a year or two. Then you come back with longer hair, different costume or different ring name or different, basically different person. You become star in Japanese ring. But Inoki was promised in the end of 1963 that you'd be the next one to go to America. So I guess he was getting ready for that. But that the master Rikidōzan passes away at December of 1963. So it's like, it wasn't going to happen because Rikidōzan passing, that the people were afraid that there wasn't going to be wrestling anymore, right?
Because that was it. He was the JWA, more or less, right?
And he was the wrestling. Yeah. But
where did Toyo Nobori rank up between where Inoki
he was number 2 guy. Yeah.
So he was the number 2 guy when Rikidōzan was alive.
Right. Already number 2 guy, because Rikidōzan really loved this guy, Toyo Nobori. And also he was like a little brother he came from a sumo wrestling world too. Former sumo wrestler. And actually Toyo Nobori and Inoki were really tight at the time. And 3 months after Rikidōzan's passing, March of 1964, Inoki finally left Japan. Then went to Hawaii first. The Toyo Nobori to 1965. The 2 years, Inoki traveled the U.S. Never came back for 2 years.
And in this time, JWA had dissolved, or what had happened with the original JWA company?
Made Toyo Nobori a champion.
I see. Yeah, but it didn't last until the 70s.
No, we'll get to that. That. So after Rikidōzan passing, the 4 wrestlers, Toyo Nobori, Kokichi Endo, Yoshino Sato, and Michiaki Yoshimura. Those 4 quartet became the president of the wrestling company after Rikidōzan died. So 4. Yoshino Sato, Kokichi Endo, Michiaki Yoshimura, and Toyo Nobori. Okay, those 4. But in the ring, Toyo Nobori pretty much was the guy to be the ace of the ring. And JWA had a business partnership with WWA, the Worldwide Wrestling Associates from California. Now defunct, of course, but the WWA was the world heavyweight title. At the time, the Destroyer, Dick Bayer, was a champion. Destroyer was brought into Japan, and Toyo Nobori beat him to become WWE World Champion. That was their big program. In the meantime, Inoki on his own. Like 20 years old, only 20-year-old Inoki traveled to States all by himself, starting from California, Los Angeles, then went to Kansas City for a while, and then became, his ring name is Tokyo Tom. Yeah, Tokyo Tom, yeah. Then came back to California, then went up to Portland, Oregon for a whole year. The Don Owen, the Portland Pro Wrestling. Yeah, then he spent one whole year over there. Then came back to California. Then also traveled to Tennessee, and then made a tag team with Hiro Matsuda and beat the Medics to become their version of NWA World Tag Team Champions. And then he traveled to Tennessee, that part of Texas, and Houston. Paul Bosch, yeah, of course, and yeah, he was, and I think his name was Little Tokyo in Texas too, Little Tokyo, and also Anji Inoki. They say he had a different ring name in different places, much like a lot of Japanese wrestlers at the time, huh?
That was pretty common. It seemed like the promoters just decided what was best for the wrestler, and one area they'd be.
They won't use the word, but I have a copy of Houston program from like 1965. The caption read Jap Giant.
You would see that a lot in the papers and in media. That was accepted. Yeah, it was accepted. Yeah, you would see it pretty. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, because Inoki, like legitimately 64, 65 at the time when he was younger, he was a lot taller. He shrunk a little, as he got older. But 64, like a 190 centimeter height Japanese, was pretty tall for American common sense, huh?
I think so. It seemed like
because when you look at the people like a Great Togo or Tojo Yamamoto or Mitsu Arakawa or Duke Kiyomuka, or at the time that the Japanese wrestlers were short and stocky
guys with the long black pants.
Like knee tights and barefooted. You throw salt. Smile.
Less of a fighter.
Everything stereotypical that you bow and smile for no reason, and when your opponents turn their back, that you attack them like a Pearl Harbor, right? But for Inoki, he was a good-looking young wrestler, real tall, and he didn't have that, typical Japanese heel knee tights. He had a short trunks, barefooted, but the short trunks. So he grew out of this stereotypical Japanese role while he was in America. Then he traveled, like I said, California territory, Oregon territory, Kansas, Tennessee, Houston, Texas. Yeah, then he spent the entire 2 years traveling around, traveling when you were 20 and 21, 22. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. That's adventurous.
Especially then. That was a very interesting time in the States.
Right. And you're still like really, I mean, if you're a Japanese wrestler, you're automatic heel, huh?
Back then, for a very long time, that was the
and then the rule breaking. And but Inoki traveled and all by himself, and he met people and hooked up with like became really close later on. Hiro Matsuda. Hiro Matsuda was pretty much the very first free agent. He walked away from Rikidōzan's school. He went to Peru, then he went to Mexico, then moved to America, and later on he was part of NWA Florida Championship Wrestling from Florida office. And the Hiro Matsuda was kind of like an older brother to Inoki, and they became tag team. And it was actually like a meeting up. It's like traveling all by yourself, wrestling is one thing, but the meeting people and making your own connection was just as important, right?
It wasn't so easy to do back then either. It was very who you were connected with. They were really bonded with these people. You really
Duke Kiyomuka from Florida and Texas, and also the Morris Siegel from Houston, Paul Bosch, promoter, And Kansas, Sonny Myers remembered Inoki from Rikidōzan. See, Sonny Myers was the promoter and the main event guy in Kansas City that he remembered young Inoki because Sonny Myers came to Japan previous years and spent like 3 months in Japan challenging Rikidōzan's international title and recognized something in young Inoki. So Sonny Myers invited Inoki over to Kansas City and you come here and spend time. And these were a very interesting time. And that's when he picked up English. He had to speak English. And
He learned a ton.
yeah, and then slowly but surely you are becoming international oriented, what international superstar wrestling should be. Not just wrestling skill and how to work or psychology of professional wrestling, but I mean, all about this wrestling business as a whole. Something probably Rikidōzan didn't teach you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he couldn't teach. He was in a much different position
At the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Like we said, like a different path, different. It was important, just as important, but very different.
Yeah, but that really made Inoki though as a person. You're on your own, traveling all over the United States, all by yourself when you're 20, 21, 22. And you really picked up the business too. And becoming Antonio Inoki. Then fast forward a little bit, January of 1966, he flew back to Hawaii on his way back to Japan. Okay? And something happened within JWA at the time. Toyo Nobori was fired from the JWA. And Yoshino Sato, Kokichi Endo, and Yoshimura, 3 guys took over the whole business. And Toyo Nobori was pushed out. And when Inoki went to Hawaii, that all those 3 people were there to meet, along with JWA's agent Oki Shikina. That all right, you're coming back to Japan and participating in the 8th annual World League tournament. And we gotta that promise you this much money and guaranteeing and the whole bit. And a couple of days later, that the now free agent Toyo Nobori shows up in Hawaii and had a secret meeting with Inoki. And Toyo Nobori told Inoki that 23-year-old Inoki, that leave JWA. You'll never surpass Giant Baba. They have planned for Giant Baba. If you go back to JWA, that you are always going to be number 2 guy. And Toyo Nobori had a plan that he's starting a second company, Tokyo Pro Wrestling. Did you know that?
Yeah. Which was different from, I think there was Tokyo Pro Wrestling later on in like the 90s, yeah?
Oh, it's completely different.
Yeah, different, no association.
23-year-old Antonio Inoki was about to start his very first outlaw company. Kind of like JWA being NWA established with network television with big budget, about to run an annual World League tournament in spring, and Inoki was going to be somewhat a focal point of the tournament. But Toyo Nobori came to Hawaii and stole him, with 1-day meeting. But it's well documented, but to this day, we don't know what was talked about. But Toyo Nobori promised him that Inoki, that the 23-year-old, very, he had desire to be the number 1 guy, of course, and ambitious, right? That after one night, secret closed door meeting with Toyo Nobori, he decided, Inoki pretty much decided to walk away and leave JWA altogether. 23-year-old Inoki starting his first outlaw promotion. It's called Tokyo Pro Wrestling. And Inoki and Toyo Nobori spent next 6 months in Japan, putting together a new company. And I believe September or October of this 1966, Tokyo Pro Wrestling finally launched. In the meantime, this 23-year-old now becoming a promoter, Antonio Inoki traveled back and forth to the States to recruit a wrestler and to start a tour, right? Very first Tokyo Pro Wrestling tour had then that they haven't seen, that the superstar from America in Johnny, Valentine, he was able to bring Johnny Valentine to the tour, and that was the main event of Tokyo Pro Wrestling. 23-year-old Antonio Inoki against U.S. heavyweight champion Johnny Valentine, and that was their big match. Are you following me?
That was a big deal. That was a big deal because was that his first real spotlight sort of match?
Sure. Yeah, because Inoki left, Japan 3 years earlier, and he wasn't in the magazine or anything. Just he was gone for a while, but he came back as like a new star. So of course that the JWA's focal point was moving towards Giant Baba, and JWA revived Rikidōzan's international heavyweight title and then held a tournament to determine the reborn international heavyweight title. Things like Giant Baba against Dick the Bruiser, Giant Baba against Dick Beyer, the Giant Baba against whatnot, and Giant Baba was becoming a superstar of Channel 4. So it was the very first year that the Inoki was like still chasing, but like coming closer and closer to Baba's status. 1966. But unfortunately, though, this Tokyo Pro Wrestling only lasted like just 1 year.
Mm.
Yeah. And they went out of business as of 1967. And January of 1967, yet another company called IWE, International Wrestling Enterprise, started with Hiro Matsuda and Isao Yoshiwara. That Inoki worked one tour with IWE and revived the American tag team in Inoki and Hiro Matsuda, and they were billed as NWA World Tag Team Champions and had a series of matches against people like Eddie Graham and Sammy Steamboat. So they had tour. But there was a falling out that and then a politician came in and they signed Inoki away, and then Inoki was all of a sudden Inoki was signed with JWA back in April of 1967.
So he was only with IWE for a very short time.
One tour. And at the time, the Tokyo Pro Wrestling went out of business quick. Yeah. And there was a falling out between Inoki and Toyonobori too.
Any idea what happened? Was it a money thing?
Everything, yeah. Because they were going to have this, 40-day tour, and it was cut short to 15 shows. They were going to have television deal. It never happened. And a lot of things, yeah. And at the time, people like, young Masa Saito, young Rasha Kimura, all these people were in undercard of Tokyo Pro Wrestling now. Very interesting, huh?
And later IWE too, like Kimura, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So they will cross path again. That's so interesting. That's what's so interesting about the wrestling.
Yeah, that's there was a big kind of rivalry or feud between Rasha Kimura and Antonio Inoki, kind of at the end of
IWE. In the early 80s, yeah, into
early 80s, and then early kind of that early New Japan myth building of Antonio Inoki. We'll get to that probably in the next episode.
Yeah, a little bit later on. Yeah, next. Yeah, but the young Masa Saito came out of Tokyo Olympic 1964, joined JWA, but he wasn't happy. So Masa Saito and Thunder Sugiyama, two Olympians, walked away from JWA, and one joined IWE. Masa Saito joined Tokyo Pro Wrestling, and Inoki and Masa Saito actually they shared an apartment in Hawaii for 6 months and trained together. Masa Saito and Inoki. See, they were like the best of friends, actually. Later on, they became big rival in late 80s. If you remember, Inoki against Masa Saito, like 5 important single match in 1987.
Including the jungle match.
Yeah, all those things.
Small.
Yeah, and then that's when, Masa Saito pretty much decided that he should be heel. That will make him the single match opponent against Antonio Inoki on top.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So later on, that's like much later on, they'll cross path again. But pretty much after Tokyo Pro Wrestling, that the Masa Saito decided to move to America and spend next 20 years just in America. Yeah.
I'm sure we'll cover that on a different episode as well, because
yeah.
And when he came back to feud with Inoki, he had come back from those 20 years of living in the States. He was a star in the States. For sure.
Yeah, WWF Tag Team Champions was Mr. Fuji, or the U.S. Tag Team Champion in San Francisco was Kinji Shibuya, or he was a U.S. champion, that the Florida Heavyweight Champion, NWA Florida. He traveled all over on his own. That's another story. That's like a very interesting wrestling story in him. So we'll have Masa Saito episodes sometimes, but tonight we're talking about Antonio Inoki and JWA in April of 1967. That's when Inoki and Giant Baba became BI combination. Baba-Inoki together as like the strongest tag team for the next 5 years. Yeah. Inoki and Baba together, though, for the 5-year period. 67 to 70, end of 1971. Inoki leaves JWA again and forms New Japan Pro Wrestling 1972. Giant Baba leaves JWA and form his All Japan Pro Wrestling, both 1972. So 1972 is a very interesting year too. But for now, that the 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, for the five-year period, there was a happy 5 year that the Baba and Inoki were together. The BI combination, Baba and Inoki, okay? BI combination as an international tag team, like when I was a little kid, that they beat every tag team, like Dick the Bruiser and the Crusher, that the Danny Hodge and Wilbur Snyder together, that the all kinds, young Terry and Dory Funk, that they beat everybody. Yeah.
They were like a super team.
They were a super team, yeah.
And they were sort of, in the position, they took the place of Rikidōzan after he passed away. Both of them together were...
And also, as symbolic as it is, that the Rikidōzan was a hero of black and white TV. Okay? And Giant Baba and Inoki was when everybody bought the color TV.
Yes, yeah. Different generations.
Different generations, yeah. Late 60s into early 70s, when Leave It to Beaver became color. If you remember I Love Lucy or something, the beginning it was black and white, and later on it became color. Yeah.
So a lot of the young Inoki and even Baba fans were probably the sons and daughters of Rikidōzan fans.
Yeah, because I was not there when Rikidōzan was a hero, Yeah, Rikidōzan died when I was 1 year old, when
so
I started
he was
watching,
a legend already.
Yeah. Yes, a national hero. And then also it links that the post-war period, that people are rebuilding their homes and the economy reviving, and you start having refrigerator in your home, you start having television set in your home, or the laundry the laundry machine at your house, and that the economy booming with like Tokyo Tower being built, the Olympic being brought back in 1964, and all these things that Japan is becoming big, you had the economy boom, right?
It became the number 3 nation economically, culturally. Japan became important not just within pop culture, but within high tech culture. I mean, a lot of the high tech was coming out of Japan, like you said, color TVs and refrigerators and Sharp and what other companies?
Sharp, Sony, Panasonic.
Everything.
If you're talking about the car, Toyota, Nissan, Honda, Mitsubishi, all these Toshiba, Hitachi, all these companies, became big. That was like a booming period in late 60s into 70s, and Antonio Inoki and Giant Baba, the big combination, like both tall Japanese, right? And on color TV, they became symbol of 1970s.
And they both had the represented fighting spirit, burning spirit.
And the Giant Baba was a world champion, a world giant. And in 1971, I believe, 69, 1970, JWA started carrying wrestling program in 2 different stations, Channel 4 Nippon TV and NET Later on, it becomes TV Asahi, that the Channel 10. So one company had two different network, two different nights, Monday night and Friday night. Then we start scratching their head. It's like, is that two different kind of wrestling? And later on, sure enough, became All Japan and New Japan. Isn't that interesting?
It was 1971 where they broke up. So what was the climate like when both first it was Inoki
was
that left?
still
yeah?
number two though. Still number two, because Baba and Inoki together, international tag team champion, right? They were the big tag team. By the way, it's the same physical belt that the Suwama and the Shotaro Ashino holds today.
The very
It's the same
smaller kind of looking belt.
Eagle in the middle. Yeah, that tag team, the physical belt is still being used to this day. Isn't that interesting? Like antique. But those two championship belt were the physical championship belt Inoki and Baba together were holding at the time.
The super team passed down.
And also, Baba's international heavyweight title is part of Triple Crown today, right? Yeah. So
50 years ago.
Yeah. Interesting. Then Inoki needed singles championship too. In 1971, Inoki traveled to Olympic Auditorium in LA, beat John Tallis to become United National Heavyweight Champion, UN champion. That's also part of All Japan's Triple Crown today.
That's right.
Yeah. So one channel, Inoki's UN heavyweight champion, and one channel, Baba's international champion. It's like, wow, is that two different kind champion and two different channel and one company? It was going to to go separate ways sooner or later, because JWA had budget from two different networks, and they were spending money. And then Inoki was going to go into the account that somebody's making money, that we're not making money, and he was gonna go into their booking, and they were going to, Inoki and his people were going to clean up the company, and Baba was going to look into their account too. So shortly after Inoki left and formed New Japan, and Baba left to form All Japan, that the old JWA company, after all, went down. Yeah. I mean, that was a lot more complicated than this, though.
Of course.
Yeah. Basically, Inoki was kicked out by JWA. Therefore, he formed New Japan Pro Wrestling in March of 1972. In the meantime, Baba was going into their account, to clean up the money and the business situation, and pretty much the backup that the promised by Channel 4, that if you moved out of JWA, we'll have that the Channel 4 will be with Giant Baba. There was a promise. So Giant Baba decided to walk away from JWA to form his own All Japan Pro Wrestling. And without Baba and Inoki together, pretty much JWA went down quick the following year. Then Seiji Sakaguchi was joined New Japan, Inoki's side, and pretty much wrestlers were split into two groups at the time.
And we mentioned Karl Gotch earlier. He'd come into play at the beginning of New Japan too.
Yeah, because when Inoki left or being kicked out or fired by JWA, he became pretty much isolated from wrestling world. That the JWA did everything to stop Inoki from opening up his own company. It's kind of almost like a monopoly mentality, right? That the JWA, Yoshino Sato, and other people that got in contact with all the promoter in America, please do not help Inoki, right? Yeah, so it's like Inoki was blocked from every major company in America to be associated with. So of all that, Inoki went straight to New York City. At the time, Karl Gotch and Rene Goulet, WWA tag team champions. See that now that the Karl Gotch is like more of a symbol of shoot wrestling and MMA, like a pioneer of MMA style, right?
Strong style.
Yeah, but at the time, he was under contract with Vince McMahon Sr. He was a wrestler.
WWF, yeah, him and Rene Goulet were baby faces.
Yeah, like European tag team, one from Germany and one from France. Well, it's Belgium, but basically he spoke the German, so he was treated as a German superstar. Anyhow, that he was traveling and touring WWF at the time, and Inoki went straight to Karl Gotch, please help me open this company. And then he decided to walk away from WWF and became booker and a trainer of Inoki's new company, New Japan. That was very symbolic.
Mm.
The reason Inoki and Karl Gotch was tight was that between 1968 and 1969, about a year and a half period, Karl Gotch was living in Japan as a coach of JWA.
Right. That's right.
Yeah. And that was during the time that Karl Gotch gave Inoki his German suplex hold and octopus hold. And Inoki, the Karl Gotch also taught Sakaguchi how to do atomic drop as his finish. And he was like a coach. He coached all these young Japanese wrestlers at the time. He was living in Japan. But Inoki spent most time with Karl Gotch and wanted to be like Karl Gotch. Because the logic at the time was, though, Giant Baba's wrestling is so American, it's phony. Antonio Inoki's style is for real. That was the logic. Isn't that interesting? I mean, after all, it's both wrestling, professional wrestling, of course, but the Inoki needed his very original logic. I don't know about Giant Baba. That's what he does. But what I do is real. That was 1970s logic.
Well, I think Inoki, it seems like he was never in a position like Baba where he was backed by the machine. He never had the big machine backing of NWA or any of the big money spender, or like a NTV, for example. It was for him that was in charge of
Underdog.
that. He was always an outlaw underdog, and he always had to work with the outlaw companies in the States, whether it's WWF or the NWF a little before that, when he would wrestle Johnny Powers all the time.
Well, I mean, after that, like 73, 74, yeah.
But all these companies, they weren't.
Yeah, because Inoki was like anti-establishment.
Right.
Baba, right after he opened up All Japan Pro Wrestling, he went straight to St. Louis and met up with people like Sam Machinik, became, then he got the NWA membership right away.
Mm-hmm. They were part of the club.
Part of the big establishment, and also secured Dory Funk Sr. to be his own agent. Therefore, Dory Funk, Terry Funk, Dory Funk Sr., all supplying all the territories' top talent, from Detroit, the Sheiks people, Indianapolis, Dick the Bruiser people, AWA, Vern Gagne people, Tennessee, California, whatnot. They had a connection with every single the major territory in America at the time. So Inoki had to work with Karl Gotch, like you said, Johnny Powers, NWF, and a little bit of people from Montreal. Yeah, and also Mike LaBelle from California, Olympic Auditorium. Yeah, so very limited offer, and also personal connection with people like Johnny Powers and Inoki's then best friend Pat Patterson. Yeah, so young Pat Patterson and young Inoki were traveling together in Oregon back in 1965. Isn't that interesting?
Oh, okay. And did they travel down to California too?
Yeah, but Pat Patterson became his own superstar. But they kept in touch in the early years of New Japan Pro Wrestling, like 1974, 1973. They didn't have many major talents. So the most famous wrestler Inoki had was like Johnny Powers, Pat Patterson, and Tiger Jeet Singh.
Mm-hmm.
Or Maguire brothers, if you remember, like a big, fat, huge twin brothers. Yeah. And
was Andre the Giant involved around then yet, or was that?
1974 that the Inoki finally had a partnership with Vince McMahon Sr. Yeah, and Vince McMahon already had Andre the Giant under contract, but Vince Sr. decided not to keep Andre in New York City the entire year. That Andre should not stay in one place, or his commodity or his star value or fade, that Andre the Giant should make special appearance all year long. So Vince McMahon Sr. was sending Andre to all these different territory all over the world, all over US. And whenever Andre the Giant appears, that will become your extravaganza battle royal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's Florida, where it's Tennessee, or it's Houston, Texas, San Antonio, Texas, Amarillo, Texas, Dallas, Texas, or Vancouver, Canada, or Calgary, or Montreal, or Toronto. Wherever Andre went, it was like a special event. And that's how Andre was treated. In the meantime, that Vince McMahon Sr. decided to send young Andre the Giant to Inoki's New Japan company half the year. So Andre was part of New Japan all through 70s. So that helped, Inoki, and that was interestingly enough that the New Japan was the only place Andre worked heel. See, remember 70s and the 80s until he challenged Hulk Hogan for WrestleMania 3. Until then, Andre the Giant was the ultimate babyface wherever he went, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in New Japan ring, he always worked as heel. It's not scary to have
Inoki.
Of course, in Inoki and Andre the Giant single match became like your top dollar program.
Kind of a prelude to Hogan and Andre later on in the 80s.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But then again, Andre the Giant showed his, genuine ability to work heel. He actually wrestled good wrestling match against Inoki. Working heel, walking into audience, walking into crowd like a big monster, scary monster. That he really worked heel real well in Japan. And audience in the US didn't know about that at the time.
Yeah, we didn't see that. Yeah.
Right. Oh, worked here all along. Anyhow, that was Inoki's New Japan story. Initially, he needed that to create the aura and this almost like ideology that the Inoki's wrestling is real, where Baba's aunt or something. It's interesting. But the Inoki's wrestling is real. He's with Karl Gotch. He's a symbol and god of wrestling. And that the New Japan logo always had strong style, right? King of sport. Same logo that today's New Japan uses that was created back in 1972, the lion logo.
Yep, the lion mark.
Yeah, that logo was created in the beginning, very beginning of New Japan Pro Wrestling.
We did the best we could covering the early days of Inoki, from growing up, going to Brazil, coming back, going to the States, going back to JWA.
Tokyo Pro Wrestling and JWA.
Tokyo Pro Wrestling, International Wrestling. He did a lot, and he was only, maybe before 25, 26 years old. He had already done quite a bit. So, and that's just the first episode. I think next time we can start off talking the early years of New Japan, which was kind of a platform for Inoki, because after that one loss to Gotch at the beginning of its, history, it became just the Inoki show. He was at the main event. He was at the top of the card. He took out monsters and big foreigners and top Japanese stars for years and years.
Yeah, decades. But still wasn't part of NWA establishment.
That's right. And this is the New Japan. When New Japan started, this idea we were talking about, the idea that you mentioned, the philosophy of my wrestling is not just different from what you're doing, but it's better and it's more real. That idea really is coming from the Inoki side. The NWA, also, the American style.
Giant Baba's connection with American promoters. Therefore, that's another reason he started doing the cross, that the wrestler against martial arts, or Inoki against kickboxer, Inoki against professional boxer, Inoki against judoka. Therefore, the beginning of MMA.
Very much so. They call it like a mixed, what was it called? Like a mixed fight or something?
Mixed martial arts.
No, there was a name for it earlier on, like a mixed styles match or something. I forget the name of it.
Issue Kakutogi.
Mm-hmm. How do you say that in
Ishu
English?
Taktogi is actually translated to MMA, mixed martial arts.
Mixed martial
Ishu
arts.
Taktogi. Yeah, it became a word later on. So
Mhm.
how influential Inoki really is.
Yeah, and just the general idea of bringing the martial arts into pro wrestling and incorporating it, because every single wrestler, maybe every other wrestler you see today, has kick pads and does low kicks or high kicks. This used to be so foreign to pro wrestling, especially in the States. Martial arts in general, we saw it first really with New Japan Pro Wrestling and Inoki's guys.
And actually, the kicking pad was created by Satoru Sayama, the original Tiger Mask, and #1 protege kid of young Antonio Inoki.
His DNA is almost everywhere.
Oh, God, everywhere. And Satoru Sayama, before he was Tiger Mask, he was Inoki's favorite, the tall boy.
And it's interesting because even though they trained together and they had that relationship of mentor and mentee, it still seemed like Sayama became something completely different and completely separate from Inoki. He really branched out, and
Well,
of course,
actually, he is most similar to Inoki, though.
Oh yeah, in which senses, which ways?
The creativities and ideas, and how to be connected with the audience. And he always finds his own big sponsors,
Yeah, that's right too. But
Yeah.
again,
And
no
also
association with
Fujiwara,
NWA.
then throw in Fujiwara, Yoshiaki Fujiwara and Akira Maeda in it too. Those were also, and Nobuhiko Takada. Fujiwara, Maeda, Takada, Sayama, they were all Inoki's seconding boy.
Oh, and Funaki and Suzuki and
Later on.
those
But
is
the
later. The early
Fujiwara
80s
was the
guys.
original, then Sayama, then Maeda, then Takada, before Muto or Minoru Suzuki or anybody like that.
But every single name you just mentioned is a big, big, big star.
Very influential. So clearly Inoki's DNA in there, though.
Everywhere, even still.
Everywhere.
Even still, it's noticeable
To
even
this
when you
day.
watch any product. I'm not just talking about Japanese wrestling. You see it everywhere.
Yeah. But when we do the Giant Baba episode, we'll see clearly, you see Baba's DNA in Jambotsu, in Mitsuharu Misawa, Kenta Kobashi, Toshiaki Kawada. It's completely different school of wrestling.
Yeah, it's more of an extension of the NWA style. I think it's a lot about toughness and athleticism and keeping with the current, or not current, but at the time current rules or
the
norms,
traditional method.
Traditions, sure.
Traditional wrestling method. Because American superstars or American establishments always choose Baba over Inoki. Dory Funk, Terry Funk, Harley Race, Bruiser Brody, Stan Hansen, Terry Gordy, Steve Williams, everybody. You know what I'm saying?
And they're all big, big guys. Giants, land of giants compared with New Japan.
There's a reason for it. There's a reason for it. Now we'll get to that. Yeah. But tonight, I think, did we cover enough ground for like a very, very first episode of Antonio Inoki?
This should get you prepared.
Still in mid-70s now, though.
Yeah, the beginning of New Japan, which is the beginning of a long and very important era, but also one of the most exciting parts of the story.
Yeah, Inoki against Karl. In 1972 and 1973, 1974, Karl Gotch still wrestled in the ring. Like 48-year-old, Karl Gotch still good. I was there. When I was 5th grade and 6th grade, I went over there and actually watched Inoki against Karl Gotch live.
And that's you were there for the passing of the torch. It seems like what it was. It was Gotch passing the torch.
And I learned the word like a deities. Karl Gotch so special. I mean, different from anybody. And he stand there, and you can tell this person is so special.
Like his body, his aura,
just by standing there, and his face, mannerism, something about him. Yeah. I mean, God of wrestling is not gimmick. I mean, I believed in it. I still do to this day. Yeah. But Inoki and Karl Gotch together, they were the very beginning of New Japan.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to our next episode. We're because I think we got everything we need to just jump right into Karl Gotch, New Japan, Antonio Inoki, and really some of the hottest years of Inoki's
Yeah,
career.
without that, without that period of Inoki and Karl Gotch, there weren't gonna be Fujiwara, Maeda, Sayama, Takada, you name it.
Or
Funaki,
even Nakamura,
Pentax.
or
Later on, yeah.
Shibata. I mean,
Even born then.
it's like it's all connected, which is what's
I
fun
think so.
about it.
I think so. Oh yeah. All
Okay,
connected.
so next time, part 2, we're gonna rev up the engine and get more into it with Antonio.
And mid 70s into 80s, then 80s on.
Yeah, and we'll see some famous names pop up.
Yeah, with us. Yeah.
Yeah, get ready for more Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan popping up, and Stan Hansen, and all kinds of exciting names. Brody.
Younger Stan Hansen, and the birth of IWGP.
Wow, there's a lot to do. So let's get ready for it.
If there was no NWA World Heavyweight title at the time, like a closest thing to undisputed World Heavyweight title, the idea of IWGP wouldn't have been born.
Oh, we got a lot to cover. I got to get my notebook for next time. All right,
Okay.
Fumi. So take it
All
away.
right, so long from Tokyo.
I write that down.